Dael Orlandersmith is a poet, an actress, and a playwright who won an Obie Award for her play Beauty's Daughter, which she wrote and starred in at the American Place Theater in New York City. She's also an actress with film and television credits, which include Hal Hartley's amateur episodes on Spin City and the film Get Well Soon with Courtney Cox. Miss Orlandersmith's perhaps most well-known play is Yellowman, which she was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. Would you join me in welcoming to the Kennedy Center and to the Dramatists Guild, Dael Orlandersmith. A lot has happened in the last 10, 15, 20 years in our lifetimes. So what do you see as your role as an artist?
You know, that's such an overused word, too. I write plays, I act in plays. I mean, hopefully I can use tool as a language, and hopefully I'm a decent person, or trying to be a decent person, and tell the truth. And I think that's what our role is. And again, what I was saying before about being mental and emotional travelers, we have to be fearless. We have to be fearless in terms of looking at ourselves and in terms of the writing that we do. So that's what I see.
Do you see your responsibility to hold a mirror up to society? Do you have a mirror to yourself? Is it
both? You know, 3 fingers pointing back at you. So I think it's both. No one can write for a society. I think hopefully my contribution adds to the collective. But I'd like to think that I could dig into myself and continue to dig into myself and be honest. As beautiful as that is, or as ugly as that is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I read recently that one of the things that you are particularly passionate about and talking about, both in talk and in spirit and feeling, is this notion of being pigeonholed as a African-American female playwright.
It's a lot.
And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Proud of being female, proud of being black, but again, when people throw this description, automatically there's an expectation for me to write a certain way in terms of the work. I mean, no one's, again, we were talking about Obie, who's one of my favorite writers. No, if he was sitting up here, or if he was sitting, no one would say white, gay, male writer. They would just say writer, and I want that same freedom. I want to be able to write about anything, everything I choose. You know, again, as Robert Burns says, you know, being a citizen of the world. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't have a myopic vision. I'm someone who hangs out with everybody, who, you know, does what she wants to do. My reading list is very eclectic. My musical tastes are eclectic. You know, this is not to say that I'm not aware of bias. How could I not be aware of bias? But I've never allowed it to keep me from doing what I had to do.
I have to say, in getting to know you over the last couple of days, and particularly hearing you speak, I am overwhelmed by the breadth of your knowledge. But what's fascinating to me is both this cultural stuff that you have, this stuff that's very contemporary, but it's really across the board in what you read and what you listen to and what it fascinates you and where your interest lies. So was that a product of your education? Was it a product of your family, your own journey, your quest?
I think the curiosity is innate. Mm-hmm. I mean, where I grew up, it was primarily Black and Latino, you know, and which is fine, you know. But I also wanted to see other places. I think my own curiosity took me to other places where, you know, past 96th Street, where I wanted to just see and drink up and eat, read it all. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think the curiosity was innate. There were a few teachers along the way, but I think sometimes you can look at people as an example of what not to do.
Mm-hmm. Are you a teacher? I'm
no.
Curious. And yet you have this incredible gift of sharing and knowledge and right here at your fingertips.
I don't know.
When I said that, you went, no.
No.
What does that mean?
I mean, what could I possibly teach anybody?
Your craft.
I'm in transition. I'm learning as I go along myself. You know, I don't have that. I don't have that licked. I don't have that licked by any stretch of the imagination. Do I?
So what makes a good teacher then, to your definition?
Well, I mean, a teacher who's also humble enough to realize that they were also a student.
Right.
You know, that to me that makes a great teacher. Yeah.
I've also read that you have said that that there are rules in writing that appear to be constructed by white males, and that in order for your journey is to break through those rules so that everyone can write whatever they want to write.
Well, again, you know, when someone says, like when I wrote Raw Boys, and someone says, well, what makes you want to write about this Irish family? Edward Albee can write about the life and death of Bessie Smith. You know, Shakespeare can write Othello. Neil Jordan can do The Crying Game in Mona Lisa. Why can't I write about this Irish family? Right. Where's that written where I can't do that?
So your eye is really trained on the humanity.
Yeah. This is not to say that there isn't gender struggle and there isn't racial and ethnic struggle. Of course that it's there, but there are also other things. What triggers those things, and again, what is the humankind struggle? For instance, the play that I wrote again, Bones, which is written for the Taper. It's written where anybody of any race can do it. It just has to be age specific.
Right. Is that an exciting thing for you, having this production of the Taper coming up, or
if
are you?
we do, if they take it.
Are you are you also terrified at the same time, or is
I'm nervous about it. Sure, I'm nervous about it because the subject matter again. Did this woman? It's about a woman who might or might not have sexually abused her children. And again, it's Rashomon. It's like we're looking at the memory bank in terms of family. When we're dealing with family and the memory bank, you'll have this major incident where 4 people will have 4 different versions as to what happened. So that's the family dynamic. So yeah, I'm totally looking at that and going, what the hell did you just do? But there's no other way for me to write at this point.
I know that in your approach to your writing or your own process, that music is very important to you. I also happen to know that you cook while you write. Yeah,
when I'm stuck.
Right. Can you talk a little bit? I'm curious how that unstucks you. Unstucks you? How about unsticks you?
Unsticks you. If I have a scene where where I've been laboring for like 3 or 4 hours, I go, what the hell with this? I'm gonna cook. And I call people and I'll go, what are you doing tonight? Well, I'm doing, no, you're not. You're coming over to my house because I'm stuck and I'm cooking and I feel like cooking. Change your plans. Come over here. And that's literally what happens. I cook.
And that frees your imagination up, or that just gives you a diversion away from it?
Well, it's not so much a diversion because it takes the imagination in a different place where it can open it. By that, what I mean is this. When we look at food, we're looking at imagination. How do you take this? How do you use these ingredients to create something that's just off the hook? Like when one talks about soul food, I mean the food that was thrown at black people during slavery was hog guts, chitterlings, which is now considered a delicacy. When you look at French peasant food, again, what do you do with these beans and what do you do with this overly cured meat? What do you do with that? You create cassoulet. Samo. So it is taking this and being a magician and an artist with this. So that's what I try to do when I'm doing that stuff. I'd like to think that I was doing that stuff. I also collect wine.
Really?
Yeah.
Just to drink or to collect?
No, I drink it and I also collect it. In my apartment I have about 108 bottles of wine.
Wow.
And I have one wine because I'm going to be 50 in 2 years. So I have one wine that was made in 1959. It's a Greek wine. Primarily It's primarily Italian wine, but I have German and French, but primarily Italian is what I have.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's great. I've been doing it for like 10 years. I'm learning, on the job training with that. I love it. I think it's fascinating. It's beautiful.
Do you sense or have a responsibility to the culture as an artist or as a playwright?
Yeah, I don't call myself an artist.
Let's start there. What is that word about for you?
It is such an overused word. There are two words that are that and spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pretense with it, I think, with certain people, where it's, well, I'm an artist, and I think what that entails, and by my saying that, it also makes me egomaniacal, is much more complicated than what people think. I write plays, and I'd like to think that I live for my work. But and this is walking a fine line, but artist, the word artist has just become RT, for a club of people who have a certain amount of intellect but don't necessarily embody what that tends to mean. So that's why I say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we in a good place in the theater, do you think?
No, I don't think so. The revivals of these old plays, where the big thing has become putting a name to thing, taking films and turning them into plays. We're not taking chances on new plays and new actors.
Why do you think that's so? Do you have
money? Money has dominated everything that we've done. Thank God, like when Lisa Krohn, wrote Well, it didn't make any money. It got great reviews and all of that, but it didn't make any money because there was no quote unquote name attached to it. But I'm glad that someone was out there and said, you know what, let's look at this. Let's put this on Broadway to see what happens with that. I'm glad that there was that gives one some hope. But you have a lot of television actors, and this is not knocking television actors, who are now coming onto the stage. You've got people who were primarily film actors in the 80s who now want to prove, because they're aging, that they're still here, that they're going to do a play. I've heard people say in California, oh, I guess I'll just go to New York and do a play. And then when they get to New York or when they get to other places, they have to be trained in terms of, the voice, because they do not know how to use their voice on a stage, and also a different kind of acting. So here is someone who's already hired, because they have a name, being trained to use their voice and to act for the theater. So what is the message that we're sending to people who are in acting schools, who are in colleges? It has really become all about money. It's revolting, actually.
I think we have time now to answer some of your questions. So if you do have a question for Dael, if you would walk to the microphone, tell us your name and also the area of the country that you're in. Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Gann from Fort Worth, Texas.
Angie.
Hey. I was wondering if you could tell me, when you're seeing your work, what is your overall goal for the audience to experience?
My overall goal is that they experience, that there is in fact an experience. Well, and again, if it's being given permission to feel the horror of it, and being permission to feel the beauty of it, and the beauty of that horror, because the work tends to be dark. There's light moments. I don't mean to sound as if I'm this, this tragic, but I tend to lean toward darker work. So permission to feel this, permission to feel uncomfortable with what's there. Yeah.
Thank you.
You.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Eric Zulager from
Hi.
California.
Hey, Eric.
And I was wondering, you are a working actress and writer for the theater. How have you worked as both, and have you ever had to make sacrifices in one profession to pursue another?
Well, a lot of the early work that I did, I wrote solo plays. I was in. At this point now, I think I pretty much want to write. I'll always act, but I pretty much want to write. So in terms of the early part of my career, I was in the solo plays, So there wasn't that much of a sacrifice because it's, it was a double role. But right now, the emphasis is on the writing. It's pretty interesting just to simply do that. It's hard, actually.
Did you find it difficult? I'm curious, in relation to Eric's question. Do you find it difficult, or did you find it difficult in your own work? Did you fill in the gaps that were not written?
Mm-hmm. I could ad-lib all over the place because it was mine. Nobody else could do that. But no, I didn't. I did not do that. But yeah, it's the assumption at that particular time, what people were doing in the early '90s was writing autobiographical plays. My plays are not necessarily autobiographical, and and when people ask me, are they? It's neither here nor there. And even if one were to play oneself, you still have to characterize, So, but at this point, Eric, I just pretty much want to write I really want to write other plays, multi-character plays, and I'm in transition right now. So it's interesting, but it's hard being in transition.
Do you miss the solo drama?
No. I find what happened with the solo work. Again, if somebody wants to be a soloist, it's all well and fine, but you get pigeonholed into that. Really, I've seen people try to fight that, and it's bad. See, also again too, I realized when people were doing solo work, a lot of people were writing their own stories. Most people, everybody in this room has an interesting story. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a piece of theater. And it doesn't necessarily mean just because you write it that it endears you to an audience. There still has to be a beginning, a middle, an end, a story, a conflict, a resolution. And words matter. The way those words dance on that page. So like that. That's it. Thanks, Eric.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Monica Bauer from New Haven, Connecticut.
I'm from New Haven, man.
Yeah.
Hey.
And I'd like to ask you about feeding your head. I think you're an inspiration to a lot of writers because you come from, your influences are varied and deep, and your roots are in all sorts of places. If you could pick 2 books to feed the heads of young writers, which would they be?
2.
1?
Writer, as in novels, yeah?
It doesn't matter.
Well, okay, here's one. This is like off the hook, yeah? Alice Miller, Drama of the Gifted Child, which is a psychology book, you're nodding. And the other book would be Jesus, this is a hard call. Man, this is a hard call. You got me on this one. Because, see, I'm thinking of my favorite writers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that how could one book encompass all of that? What went through my mind was Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov. But that's nice summer reading.
Is that because of the scope of the work? Is that because of that intricate complexity of?
Yes, that's precisely why. Yeah, that's. But I don't know how to answer that. But I think Drama of the Gifted Child is definitely a book that we should, in terms of writers, that we should really. I think Alice Miller is an incredible psychoanalyst, and it's great, and it really plays into what we're doing as well, as writers. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know that you're a big fan of Obie, and I know that you're a big fan of O'Neill. Mm-hmm. Are there other folks that you are particularly, who's in your nightstand or who's on your bookshelf? Is it eclectic?
It's really eclectic. Right now I'm reading a couple things. I'm reading a biography on Lester Young, who was a horn player with Billie Holiday. And who's a wonderful writer? Name is Jennifer Lash. Does anybody know who Jennifer Lash is? Jennifer Lash is Ray Fiennes' mother. She died in the 90s from cancer. And she wrote a book called Blood Ties. You may have to order that. And she came up with an incredible phrase. Artists, like the saints, are the receivers. Their job is to summon every emotion, every skill, to remain skinlessly alert in order to, as Picasso says, find. I think that's incredible. I think she's a great writer, and I'm reading right now a black writer that a lot of people didn't pay any attention to called Nella Larson, who was, a lot of her work was lost. She's, was black, mixed race, because a lot of people, have a problem with saying that, but she's mixed race, and she wasn't accepted on either side. She wrote during the 20s and the 30s. She was part of the Harlem Renaissance. And there's a book called Passing, and passing meaning that she could pass for white. But actually, she really couldn't. But yeah, Nella Larson is someone I'm reading right now. And bell hooks. I'm rereading Gogol's Dead Souls. I have piles of books around me. And I'm getting ready to read Huxley, The Doors of Perception.
And if you were to pick up a playwright right now, who would that be?
That's biased. My friend Lynn Nottage. Lynn Nottage is great. I like Stephen Adly Gurgis a lot. Yeah, those guys.
All right.
Hi, Dael.
Hi.
I'm Ron Pullins
Hey, Ron.
from Massachusetts.
Hi.
And this may be a part of the question that was asked earlier, but we've heard you talk about your desire to get beyond being pigeonholed. And I think we all want to get beyond stereotypes for ourselves. At the same time, I think we are being taught, directed to reach deep within ourselves for our differences and our uniqueness and our special places where we feel pain and joy. And I wonder how you reconcile both this desire to get beyond that difference, uniqueness, and still find the energy to write. I mean, is there a place that's deep that we all draw from?
I don't know that. One person that's really, we're talking about books and stuff, right? Who I also think is really great, who helped me or helped a lot of people, Joseph Campbell. He the man. When he says that, if there's a room in your home, if you get, or if there's an hour of the day where there's nobody else around, and whatever music that is goofy to other people, and you like it, and you want to dance to that music by yourself, or you want to eat whatever you want to eat in that particular hour, that scope of time, or that with a room idea, like a room of one's own. Yeah, I'm lucky in the sense that I live by myself, and what I've managed to do over the past couple of years, the best thing that happened to me was, like I told you, this play, Raw Boys, didn't do well. The best thing that ever happened to me was that play did not do well. Because I had time, because after getting kicked in the butt, I had time to sit and think and go, this is why this didn't happen. The good thing is, being an actor and a writer, is that I'm working. The bad thing is that I'm working so much at the expense of the work. I'm just on automatic pilot right now. And that's what began to happen. I got a chance to travel a little bit. I got a chance to do some introspective stuff. And I was hanging in my room. So all the books that I have, I'm so excited by. And the music that I'm discovering. I took the time to create a room of my own. And then, like, reading the Joseph Campbell stuff is incredible. You know who he is, yeah? You like him?
Yes.
See, yeah.
Okay.
He's great, isn't he? Yeah,
Yeah.
that stuff, yeah.
Thank
I
you.
hope I answered.
You did.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pamela Turner from Multishades Atlanta. And actually, this is a little related to the last question, but I'm a little concerned because I heard you say earlier that, mention a group of women who were putting themselves into a bit of a box because they were thinking about divorce and aging and all of that. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's the kind of thing that Albee and O'Neill are writing about too, are those kinds of subjects. So how do we take those kinds of subjects that are so much a part of who we are as people and make them something that's not boxed in?
Because they've taken it, and despite some of the misogyny that's in Albee's work, and still made it everyone's. They're not trying to beat anybody across the head with a message. The people that I was talking about were trying to make a point, opposed to letting the point come through the work. When you beat people across, when work becomes cause-driven that way, you alienate people because you're beating them across the head with a message. the best kind of political theater to me is satire, where we're forced to look at ourselves and laugh, or opposed to taking this, like somebody in that particular group was saying, well, I want men to see ... There was so much anger at the expense of the work. We'll get what you're saying if one has access to language and the imagination. We'll get it. Those are the best tools. Those are the best weapons.
So you're saying going beyond a personal stake in this or a point you want to make and making it something where we're actually looking at the subject and trying to illuminate
even
it.
if we write directly about our direct experiences, we still have to, it's still going to be somewhat heightened. And then again, within that, it's going to form a different kind of truth when it hits the stage anyway. And we have to always keep that in mind. It's not going to come out directly the way you want it to come out of your head onto the page and onto the stage. And when it hits the stage, it becomes a different kind of truth. Like, I was talking yesterday about, like, for people who do documentary type theater. Like, you have someone like, say, Anna Devere Smith, who's wonderful at that. But again, when we're watching Crown Heights, we're still watching through her eyes as she turns herself into these people. You're aware that you're still watching her, and she is, in fact, telling the truth, but it's forming a different kind of truth. So when someone gets on a stage and says, I want this man to listen to me, I want this group to listen to me, I want black people to listen to me, I want white people to listen to me, it's like you alienate. You're so angry, it's not, and so these group of people who are, it got to be too much. I sat there, I fully understood, I related to what was being said, but by the same token, I also realized what was on the page and what was being said, it was beating people across the head with messages. There's nothing better than a fertile imagination. Moby Dick, that's about the unconscious. That's brilliant, Moby Dick. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
I know that you have, you started off as a poet, and that part of that was your kind of immersion into the Nuyorican Poets Cafe in New York City. And from that then, and also you were in, I believe you were in theater in high school, is what I heard you say.
Yeah, and I studied, in terms of technical study, it was at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and then HB Studio.
Was there a moment then, out of the Nuyorican, where you said, I'm a writer for the theater? A moment that you recognized yourself as a writer for the theater?
I don't know. I know I wanted to be a writer for the theater because, again, I didn't want to get pigeonholed as being a downtown East Village performer. Because a lot of people get hooked into that as well. And for people who want to do that, that's all well and fine. But I just knew I wanted to take a chance and integrate the work with characters. Yeah, but I didn't want, pigeonholing is that's my biggest fear.
Right.
It really is. So I didn't want, yeah.
But was there a kind of a seminal moment where you
No, there wasn't this pivotal moment that made me go. I tell you what it is. I looked at a lot of the people, and a lot of them are still down in East Village, who are have been doing the same work for 15, 20 years. They feel very competitive with people who are younger and all of this. And, a lot of them are stuck because their work hasn't grown. And it's really easy to dump on somebody who's younger. And they said, well, it's not the way it's 15 years ago. Guess what? It's not supposed to be the way it was 15 years ago. Yeah, and again, East Village has been really, really good to me, still is, but there's a lot of self-destruction down there too. So it's really...
Right.
Hi, I'm Lisa Leverton from Brooklyn, New York.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, I just had a question about how you think about your own work in terms of as a pure piece of literature, or, I see your work incorporates music and poetry, dovetailing on the last question. Do you feel that you inhabit sort of a breach between, archive and repertoire, and how do you think about that? And how do you get people to go with you in terms of, more experiential theater? It seems to be.
It's funny because this kind of plays in what we were saying, before. I think I do. I write plays with elements of those things, with elements of straight up literature, and definitely there's poetic language. After getting my butt kicked with Raw Boys, I said, you know what? I'm just going to sit and write. And do what comes naturally, because like I said, I'm in a transitional time. I'm proud of Bones. I don't know what's going to happen. Again, I can't predict. I don't know what's going to happen with Bones. I don't know, but it's a piece I feel, if one's going to look at it that way, I feel it's one of the best things I've written, because, and I'm contradicting myself to a certain degree. I like to think that I didn't read papers about, do the critics like me and guess what I do. But the last thing that I did it with a guy called David Kale. We wrote something for New Haven called The Blue Album. And I said, I'm not going to read this stuff, and I didn't. I've learned in a weird way to turn my back and follow my gut. So, and I've never been about pleasing, but by the same token, I want people to like it, so there's that. I'm giving you a mixed answer. I don't write necessarily for oh, please love me, but then again, when somebody writes something bad, I can really get kind of screwed up about it. But in terms of writing Bones, it's frightening. It's frightening for me, but I have to keep doing this, And I don't know exactly, Lisa, what category to put it in. But I know what to listen to and what not to listen to. I trust myself now more so than ever in terms of that. So I don't know if that's an answer.
It's more in terms of how you personify your work as not purely literature, I guess. That was...
It's elements of it. I mean, and I'm answering you. It's elements of different things. It's elements of music. It's elements of literature. But it is, in fact, a play. There's still the beginning, the middle, the end, the story, the conflict, the resolution. But I mean, a lot of it, when it was particularly with reading Bones, yeah, it is almost like a piece of music at times. I guess the closest thing to it would be, Sarah Kane's work at all. Yeah, okay. Some of that. I mean, I think some of her work is incredible. I think because she didn't have enough of a distance from what she was doing. Although there are parts of, I do think 448 Psychosis, which was one of the last things that she wrote, was an interesting piece of work. She got into the head of the therapist, she got into the head of her own madness, but parts of that. But yeah, do you like her work?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious if is there a point where you wish somebody could have shortcutted you to your process? And if so, what that shortcut would have been? Mm-mm. You're glad that for all of it, for that journey, each piece was important.
Mm-hmm. And even now, because again, like I said, I don't have this, I mean, we're sitting here, you're talking to me, a lot of you have heard of me, a lot of you have not heard of me. It's supposed to be like that. I'm glad. I mean, the difficult stuff as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Because I'm always curious about this advice giving, right? Because part of it is, of course, it's in a room full of writers. It's always a good thing. Of course, our instinct is to help. Mm-hmm. And then there's also that part that is, you got to live it too, as well.
That's right.
And just make your mistakes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to give you. I mean, you're asking me questions, and hopefully I answer you as honestly as I can. But I'm in no position to give you any advice. Who am I? Who the hell am I to give you advice? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My house better be real clean if I do that. And it ain't.
Yeah. Oh, I'd like some advice. Or just your thoughts. I'm Gabrielle from Boston.
Hi.
Hello. So just to give a little background, you're saying there's a common belief to write what you know, and Gary was saying write also what you don't know. You were saying you write men really well. Gary's saying he writes women well. And I guess I'm just wondering about the jump to, we're talking about switching with gender. I feel like switching with race is a little different, or I would like you to just comment on that. So for example, I'm Jewish. How does it differ, and do you think that one can do justice to write about another minority's experience?
I never called myself a minority.
Okay.
That's okay.
Then another
I know what you're saying, another person's experience.
Uh-huh.
When he says writing about which, I assume what you mean by writing about what you know, writing about what you don't know is when people try to attempt something for the sake of just the intellect, that's egomania. There's no reason why I shouldn't know about your culture and you shouldn't know about mine. We're in the world together. You're supposed to interact together. I assume that's where that's coming from. When someone is just reaching for a subject because it's alien to them and therefore they want to take a chance, that's writing about what you don't know. For the people who acquaint themselves with the world and interact with people racially, ethnically, listen to all kinds of music, you then begin to know. Right. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's what I think. I think anybody can write about anybody's race. But I do think that there does have to be boundaries in certain ways. I mean, you cannot pretend to know anything and everything. Like when I wrote Raw Boys, it's interesting. I did a reading of Raw Boys in Ireland, and I did a rewrite of Raw Boys in Ireland, which went over very well, the first act. And I was told that, but people along the way were saying, this is what we do here, this is what we don't do here, this is what we do. You have to be humble enough not to speak for people. Yeah? You speak to them. Because there's a certain performer, I'm not going to call this person's name, who's made a career out of doing Black and Hispanic characters. Does this person do certain things, or does this person speak to a certain audience? Yes, but by doing so, by making it also this really heavy-duty political thing, he ends up compartmentalizing. There has to be a reason, why you want to speak to an audience about a particular. What do you personally relate to? In terms of these particular people, yes, we're all people on the planet. But yeah, when I wrote Raw Boys, I was saying, this is where I'm coming from. I appreciate aspects of this culture, but I also have to be humble enough to realize that I can't speak for. No one can speak for. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Hey.
George Nelson from Provo, Utah.
Yeah.
I've been really impressed listening to you about the rigor that I feel of your personal preparation, your intellectual preparation to write. And I'd like you to talk just a little bit about that process that you use to get yourself ready to write.
There's not a straight answer to that, George. I mean, I listen. What happens is I have an idea about what I want to write. I walk around Manhattan a lot, I listen to a lot of music, I'll cook, and then have people over, and then it's now, I know what I want to write, and I have to do that. In terms of, say, with Bones, I did have to reach there's certain research that I had to look into. Like I was reading Anne Sexton's daughter's book. There's a book called Searching for Mercy Street, written by Linda Gray Sexton, who spoke specifically about being molested by her mother, because Anne Sexton, in fact, molested her own daughter. Read that book. Diane Middlebrook also was the editor, who's an editor of Anne Sexton's work, also wrote a biography on Anne Sexton as well. So there are certain kinds of things I need to know specifically, but I lock away and I write. I need to lock away and write and not see. And I'm aware of what's going on around me, but there's also, for instance, I'm somebody who really does not watch television except for PBS. I don't want to fill my head with that garbage. I don't know whether I answered you either.
No, we were talked before about, feeding your head, getting ready, those kinds of things. And
right,
I guess
music.
That's my question.
Yeah, music, museums, meditation. That helps me fill it and clear it, because sometimes there's so much stuff in my head, I want to get straight to what I need to get to. I need to clear it. There's no methodical thing for me. Music, meditation, going to museums, and I know exactly what I want to write. I see. I'm somebody who knows exactly what she wants to write. It's just about how to do it. How do I want these characters to say certain things? And so when I'm stuck like that, I do those things. I'll go to MoMA, and I'll go to the Met, and I'll listen for a piece of music that I think defines this character, because I hear characters via music. Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah. All right. Did I answer it?
Close.
I'd like you all to join me in thanking Dael Orlandersmith for being with us
Thank
at the Kennedy
you.
Center.
Thank you. Thank you. Much. Thank you very much. It's great. It's fun.